Today we're going to talk about Nextool. Now we have a few new models to discuss, but we're also going to go over where they sit in the overall multiverse, if you will. I don't want to waste any time because we have a lot of different tools to get through. Let's go ahead and get started. Now we are going to kick this whole thing off talking about the Nextool Flagship Pro. Now I've had this in my collection for a number of years, and what it consists of is a locking saw, a locking one-handable blade, which has a liner lock, and it also has this monstrous pair of scissors. Check this out. That's huge. I mean, like, look at it. It's like almost 2 knuckles. I mean, it's no joke. This is a serious pair of scissors, and it does incredibly well in any cut test that I've put it under. It also has a screw that lets you take it apart, sharpen each blade independently, and then reassemble. This is one of the best things about this tool. And then on the inside, we have spring-loaded pliers with replaceable wire cutters, another good addition. And that rounds it out. Oh, just kidding. No, there are additional tools, these small ones right here. Unfortunately, they are the thing that's holding this tool back, in my opinion. So you have a Phillips driver that is 2-dimensional and doesn't work in recessed screws because of the addition of the pull cutter, which unfortunately also doesn't work very well in the first place. You have a can opener and V-strip wire stripper, and you have a flathead with a bottle opener. The problem I have is that these feel a bit more like an afterthought, and we'll talk later about what they could do in this slot, but I'm not a huge fan of just throwing things in there. I would much rather have seen these either A, locking, or B, as a full 1/4 inch bit driver, something that could be possible in this slot, and we'll talk about that later. The thing about the Flagship Pro is they were one of the first decent quality budget multi-tools that I saw under 50 bucks. And that was about 3 or 4 years ago. But since then, we've seen a lot more options, and actually many with better steels. In fact, many of the Leatherman Wave and Surge clones have a 7CR blade. In order for Nextool to take it to the next level, they really need to change their materials. It is no longer going to be acceptable to use the 3 and the 5 CRs they've been doing in the past. We're going to have to upgrade dramatically, and my recommendation to them is to go from where they are and take the next step up, to really go where Roxxon is going, where they have D2. And in my opinion, the place that they should look at is in 9CR 18 MOV. That's a blade steel that we see in budget knives, budget folding knives that are actually pretty decent. So that would be a dramatic jump up. And with decent materials, maybe making everything else a 5CR plus 9CR blade, maybe even a 9CR scissor, that would be a big surprise. I think you could easily ask between $40 and $50 for this tool without any problem, and it would be worth the money. In fact, in some ways, a better performing blade steel than what Leatherman offers in their base models. That's where I think this tool should go. And then in addition to changing out these small implements for something far better. Okay right now, but could be better. They also have available these really cool Kydex sheets. That's worth noting. You can actually insert these in multiple different directions, funny enough, and it still works, and it locks in place. It's got a nice little clip. So I definitely think that that's a nice little bit. And I want to talk about these other colors. So I had the other one for a long time, but then they sent me these, the green and the red. Now they look awesome, but it gives me an opportunity to talk about black oxide finishes in general. It's not just Nextool, it's every single company. When you put a black oxide finish on it, you actually lower the hardness of the steel. If you look at any knife with a black oxide finish, it actually has about a 1 point lower hardness, which can really make a difference when you're talking about softer steels in the first place. And on top of that, when you're talking about things like saws, you start to see rounded edges. You could see that kind of, especially at the tip of the blade. Now these are tossed in like some sort of tumbler that's going to give it this black oxide finish. And unfortunately, that means that you're going to get less performance from both the blades, the tools, and especially the saw. I think it really makes a big difference. Does it look good? Yes. Should you get a tool with this type of black oxide finish? Probably not. And it's not just them. Leatherman, it's the same problem. My black oxide Surge has far worse performance than my standard stainless. It's very strange, but it does in fact show up, and it is very noticeable. Still, of all the tools, this is definitely their flagship model. It definitely has the scissors that really kind of carry this tool heavily. If they make an update on the materials, I think they have something really awesome on their hands. Now, the next tool we're going to talk about is the Black Knight. So this is not a very common or easy to find one as far as I can tell. But what I like about it is it's significantly lighter and easier to pocket than the Flagship Pro. It uses the same 3 and 5 CR stainless around it. So you have 5 CR blade, 3 CR, other frame items and so on. And I think, once again, this is an example where they could definitely upgrade the steel and make a killing in the right market. Now, this scissor is no joke. It is absolutely phenomenal, and it cuts incredibly well, and definitely is one of the biggest reasons to consider a Nextool in the first place. In addition to the non-locking blade, which is very important, it's actually got a decent detent, but it is a slip joint. It also has a locking saw. So just to be clear here, a saw is still considered a blade in places like the UK. So this is still technically not UK legal because of the locking saw. However, I really do like this saw because it is tapered and could be used to drill holes, kind of used like a reamer if you wanted to. So kind of works nicely for that effect, and I dig that. And it goes along with the other small implements that are in here, which has a reamer to get things started. So once you're done drilling out a hole that deep, you can then use the saw to finish it off. So that's cool. The file was probably not necessary. It's not particularly aggressive, and it is quite small. And then on top of that, you have a flathead with a bottle opener, and the bottle opener unfortunately does compromise the strength of this flathead quite a bit. Now, on my model, which is quite a bit older, we have a square piece of steel. And normally, if you buy it now, you're going to get a 3-dimensional Phillips. And this is actually much better, and I like a lot better than the Flagship Pro. And when you buy it, you will also get this kit, which uses standard 1/4-inch bits. You just simply slot that in, which if it was Phillips, it would then slot on top of that. And then you have the ability to use standard 1/4-inch bits. I dig this. I actually like this tool a lot, especially because of its weight, which I will list right here. It's excellent, minus the fact that the materials are a bit outdated, especially in the same price points. Once again, it's showing its age, but is due for an upgrade. And I think if they just commit to the locking aspect of it, I think this actually could be a pretty decent offering. And I hope that they will take this advice and maybe consider it, because when it comes to pocketability, the weight makes this very easy. And the large scissor kind of gives it a unique approach that you don't see elsewhere. And because of the way it's set up, instead of going out this way in order to accomplish having a large scissor and so on, it goes this direction, which is the one you can actually play with the most. Going wide like this is much easier to fit in the pocket because this dimension right here is the one that you notice the most. I like this tool. I hopefully will see an upgrade to this in the future, but as it sits, it's still pretty good. I just wouldn't pay more than $30. So if you can find it under $30, it's probably a pretty good steal, and they are available both on AliExpress as well as on Amazon. I'll leave a link to them down below. Now we're going to talk about the Nextool Sailor, and this is actually a surprisingly well executed multi-tool. There's two things about it that are not great, but can all be alleviated depending on the price. So price is always an important aspect, and for me, when I bought this, it was like $25, and I think it's still a great value if you can find it about that price. Anything under $30, I think, is reasonable for this, and the tool set on it is actually surprisingly good. But some of the quirks might be deal breakers for a lot of people. And the first one is that in order to open anything, you have to actually disengage the lock at the exact same time. This is like a dexterity check. So you have to hold it down with one finger, and then you can deploy the blade. And that's a bit annoying, I will say. So basically, you're looking at a two-handed knife for the most part, except for if you're really good with your dexterity. You can push this down, and then you can deploy the blade, whether it's the serrated or the straight blade. Now, once again, we have 3 and 5 CR stainless in this, but executed pretty well. So this is a pretty decent straight blade here. And because it's outside accessible, it's actually quite comfortable to use. Can't be too upset with that. Now, the rest of the tools, once again, we have to kind of like hold that open, which is very annoying. And then we can pull everything else out. On this side, we have 3 excellent implements. The scissors cut incredibly well. We have a reamer awl, and this time with a bottle opener that doesn't impact things, which I like. And a proper flathead with a nice long stock to get into those recessed areas. All of those things are actually great. In fact, this entire side is pretty good. If they just upgrade the steel, well, then we'll be in great shape. Now, on the opposite side, it's another pretty good offering. So we have a serrated blade right here. We have a file, and this is actually the worst implement of all of them by a pretty strong margin. The cross cut is not aggressive, and the straight cut is basically no aggression. I am very against files if you can't execute them well, in case you didn't know. But no, not a great file, but the Phillips, 3-dimensional Phillips, is excellent. It's formed very, very well. It does work, and it also is going to provide the shape needed for the adapter to let you use the standard 1/4-inch bits that it comes with. And of course, you can change those out for any bits that you want. All of that is good. And then the last implement on here we have is a large saw. Pretty good tool set overall, I have to say. The saw is nice, and the whole thing is quite ergonomic. And in addition to that, of course, we have a pair of pliers. Now, these are not replaceable cutters, but they did kind of install them, and I think that's to be able to heat treat those differently than the plier head. Don't really have an issue with that. Perfectly fine. And for the price I paid, I'd say it was pretty decent value at the time. And just like so many other budget brands, this is now suffering in comparison to what is currently available, specifically the Leatherman Wave clones out there. But of all the tools that they have available right now, this probably has my favorite tool set, especially because everything locks and they're done pretty well. Just give me better steel. You know what I mean? 9 CR blade, 5 CR, everything else. Happy to pay for up to $40 for that, even with the silly locking system. But if they can make it so that at least the blades, at the very minimum, if they make it so that the blades can deploy without needing to press the lock, then I'm going to be really, really happy. As it sits, it's basically a two-handed multi-tool, and I think that is a quirk that. Next, we're going to talk about the Keychain Multitools, and these are actually some of the best out there right now, especially since the Leatherman Squirt has been discontinued along with the Leatherman Style PS. They're like the only guys in town in doing this and actually doing a pretty darn good job. So the first one we want to discuss is the Mini Sailor, and this has actually been my favorite keychain-oriented multi-tool for a while now. I haven't had any major issues, and it has a decent pair of pliers. Now, one thing of note is that this is about 1 ounce heavier than the Leatherman Squirt, but it is quite a bit bigger than the Squirt as well. So it's not a direct one-to-one comparison, but the tool set is actually surprisingly good. So we have a 2-dimensional Phillips here. We have a little lanyard ring. Now, this is the old style. I'll show you the new one in just a second. We have a flathead, and then we have a little SIM card extraction tool. That's a pretty neat little addition. And then on top of it, it has a pair of scissors. And these are actually really, really good. You'd be surprised, but these actually do a great job and perform very, very well. Now, in addition, it has a true can opener and bottle opener, and it has a small blade. Now the small blade here you can see is definitely bigger than it would be on the squirt. So we definitely have a size increase, which makes sense because the frame is also bigger. It's not a direct replacement, but it is a little bit better, in my opinion, than basically anything else that I've seen from the Keychain era. Now, this is the modern version. They have just upgraded it. First of all, I like the color way better. They've also taken the lanyard ring out and put it on the outside. Now, there's a couple benefits to this. The first one is if you have a split ring, it's not going to prevent the Phillips from opening. And I think that's what they were trying to alleviate, especially now that it can get out of the way. The other thing is, look at how thick that steel is in comparison to what we have on, let me pull it out. Well, compared to what we have here on the older version. See, much, much thinner. So it's going to prevent bending. It's going to be a little bit stronger. So overall, nice little small upgrade, and I definitely like the colors. So not much bad at all, in fact, to say this is a highly recommended tool. Cannot say enough. By every standard, I like it, and they come in under 25 bucks, which is a great thing. Now, they also make what they call the mini flagship. And there's one major problem with it, and I was going to say it, right? I was actually going to mention it, but say that, oh, I've never had this problem. And then literally I opened it, took it out of the box, and noticed that the problem that there was an issue with happened to me. It literally happened. I didn't even notice. So this is exactly the reason why I have not recommended the mini flagship. Other than that, it's a pretty solid piece. These locking springs have a tendency to shear off. That hasn't happened with the mini sailor, and for that reason, yeah, it's a bit of an issue. And it's too bad too, because look at the size of the scissors on these, right? Huge, in addition to the pliers, and the weight being pretty good as well. And then to cap it all off, it has a decent flathead that's nice and straight, that is also quite long, and even the file is not bad. And then the same thing with the two-dimensional Phillips over here. And then it also has the can opener, bottle opener combo along with that blade, which is also a little bit bigger, which now doesn't work because of that spring break. So as of right now, as much as I'd love to recommend the mini flagship, this is the issue it has, in addition to also being more expensive than the mini sailor. So I would still go with this one. Absolutely, I like this one a lot. But until they start figuring out why these are breaking, I kind of have to hold off. Now, maybe they'll come out with an updated version that doesn't have this issue, or at least not as common. But I've seen far too many comments in the review section on Amazon and in other places saying that this is something that happens quite a bit. Definitely looking forward to more like the mini sailor though in the future, and right now it's probably the closest thing to a squirt replacement that exists. Now this tool I find genuinely enticing. It has a couple of things to it that Nextool really needs to expand on. So first of all, the adjustable wrench. I thought it was a bit of a gimmick. As it turns out, this is actually really useful because it allows you to put a lot more pressure on the tool, because you don't have to squeeze simultaneously, than you would if you were using a standard pair of needle nose pliers. I mean, it's an adjustable wrench. We understand how that functions, right? How that works. Having it on a multi-tool maybe isn't the most practical thing in the world, but if it's executed correctly and done with really tough steel as they can, well then I'm all for that. I think that could actually end up being really, really good. Now, in addition, this tool has a non-locking blade that comes in just over 3 1/4, around a 3 1/4 inch blade length, so it's not UK legal. It's also not going to be legal because it has a locking saw on the opposite side, but these are both pretty well done on this tool, outside of the fact that they are, once again, in that 3 and the 5 CR range of steel. Now, they've actually done a pretty good job here, because in addition to the bit driver at the end here, which it does have, it also has slots to put these bits to allow it to kind of get a little bit more torque. So if I pull out this bit, which is a bit proprietary, you can see with that ball detent, I can slot it in the end and I can use it like a screwdriver. I really like that. I like the idea of it. In fact, I would love it if they got rid of these terrible small implements over here and they put a reversible bit driver in that also used, like, I don't know, the double-sided bits kind of thing. That would be great. Phillips flathead. That's it. You put a Phillips flathead square, quarter-inch bit driver in here, get rid of these small dinky implements that aren't that great, and you have a amazing tool. I hope that they do exactly that. And before you ask, can you combine them? The answer is no. The pliers here, these are a lot thinner than in the Flagship Pro. You can really see the difference. So that unfortunately doesn't work. We have standard gripping section, needle nose, and so on. So close. But still, with that adjustable wrench, I mean, that is definitely different. It is also really heavy. So this tool is very, very heavy. But they may have found a solution. And I actually have to say, this new tool that they have come out with, it genuinely interests me. I think this could actually be really, really good. Now, before you ask, this is not yet out. This is called the W2. And what they have done here is actually really, really solid. So first of all, we're coming in under 6 ounces, like significantly lighter than this, like substantially so. And it has a really cool adjusting wrench on the side. Opens up quite wide. And it has a pair of needle nose pliers, and surprisingly substantial for the size. I like this tool a lot. In fact, I like this plier head so much, you could probably get 2 of these handles and actually just make it into a small mini tool that people can keep in their pocket. I would like that a lot, especially if it incorporates this liner lock design, which it has for the 3-dimensional Phillips. So in this orientation, obviously you get high torque, but check this out. It actually has a liner lock. That I dig. I dig that a lot. Having a full 3-dimensional Phillips with a liner lock and still have 2 outer implements, yes. Yes, 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 that looks really, really solid. I like the way they did it. Now, unfortunately, once again, we have that file problem. Does have a flathead though. So there's that, non-locking slip joint. And it also has a blade. Other than that file, this is awesome. I actually really like this little tool. This could actually work in a lot of kits. It's a decent weight. It's nice and compact. And the ability to have an adjustable wrench means you don't need that small needle nose plier to be that big, right? Because if you have a nut or something that's really stubborn that you could grip onto, you can really go down on this, even more so than the larger multi-tools. This is very, very enticing. Once again, actually, you know what? I take it back. This is one of the few scenarios where I care a little bit less about the steel, because this is all about the plier heads. The adjustable wrench is probably going to be good enough, especially if the price is reasonable, and so is the needle nose. The Phillips, if it's in a 5CR, then I think we're good. If it's in a 3CR, then I would upgrade it, but I love the fact that it has a liner lock. And then really, let's be real, it's a small knife blade, and the only thing you're going to use this for is probably opening packages. All right? Real talk. I mean, it doesn't need to be that big. I like this tool a lot. I'm hoping it comes in under that $30 price point, and then I can really recommend it. Even with the mediocre file, this is a winner for me, for sure. Very rarely do I say this, but Nextool has a winner on its hand. As soon as this is actually released, I will be talking about it again in an upcoming budget video. But of all the offerings they have right now, and compared to everyone else on the market, this does something different that I don't see. And it's also quite a bit lighter and easier to carry than their larger variant. This is really solid. Really, really solid. Not much more to say, but it is a nice way to cap off this video. Now, there are a few other multi-tools made by Nextool that I don't have on the table, but it's a pretty good overview of what they have available, kind of in the more standardized multi-tool genre. They're so close, and in so many ways, they're like one or two small steps from being real contenders in the multi-tool world, and it's just about upgrading. Basically, I think that steel is one issue, and then also we've talked about some improvements to the design in a couple of different models. As it sits, if you go with the ones down below, the W2, whatever this is called, the Mini Sailor or the Sailor, I think you're actually going to find usefulness with them, maybe as a backup tool, maybe as a complement, especially when it comes to the adjustable wrench variations. And when it comes to finding replacement for the Leatherman Squirt, well, this might be the only reasonable choice. As always, thank you guys so much for your time, and we'll talk again soon.